Hey there, fellow classic comic collectors. As always, I'm Scott Harris King, and today it's winter time. It's time to get the Whalers hat back on, but it's also time to finally do a video I've been wanting to do for a long time where I talk about a specific subset of indie, self-published creator comics that I think you guys will be really interested in, because this little niche is something that's actually growing in popularity, and it's not just comics that are using public domain golden age superheroes, but it's specifically comics using public domain superheroes from the golden age, but in a bronze age style. So of course, you are all familiar with the work my own comic that I do, Cthulhu versus Uncle Sam, and the Crime Busters, where I use public domain characters. And while the Crime Busters is set in the 50s, picking up the continuity from the original boy comic series featuring Crime Busters, so it's set in the mid-50s. My storytelling style as a writer and as a comic creator is definitely Bronze Age. There's certain things that I do that modern writers tend not to do in a lot of modern superhero books. I really don't like decompression. I use thought balloons. I have certain things that some people feel are outdated. Like sometimes if I'm not 100% sure the art's going to exactly convey what's happening, I'll have a character think, oh my goodness, he's using the magical doohickey to open the super portal or whatever. And a lot of times in modern books, they don't want to do that. They don't want to explain anything to you. They're just going to assume that you're going to be able to figure it out. And I know from personal experience as a creator that even when I spell things out, I have readers that are not fluent enough in comics to understand what's happening unless it's spelled out. But also, it really, really relies on the art being super precise, and that it's difficult for an artist to sometimes get across the nuance of some of these things. So I'm old school. I'm Bronze Age in my storytelling style, and that's great. But there's some other publishers like me, independent creators who write and self-publish their own comics, who are also using public domain golden age characters, but they're using them in a specifically Bronze Age way that I think a lot of you will appeal to a lot of you. Now, the first one of these I've already showed off in a previous video when I got these from Kickstarter in one of my haul videos, but I'm going to go over it again in case you missed that. And it's called the Sentinels. It's from Standard Comics, which is done by a guy named Roy Johnson, who is up in Canada. And you can see this first issue here is numbered 267. And that's because the whole concept of this, the super high concept, is what if these public domain golden age characters hadn't been canceled and their series continued into the 1970s? So these are like late Bronze Age, early Copper in style. So it's like, books from like 78, 79, 80, 81, that sort of era is the feel of the book. And that's sort of the conceit, is that this is issue 267 in a series. And even though this is the first issue, there's 266 issues worth of backstory that's referenced here. So you'll have the like editor's note, when they meet a supervillain they fought before, it'll be like, they fought, this person in issue 45. Now, of course, the 45 was never really published, but there's this huge continuity. I love it. It reminds me very much of when I first started reading comics in the 80s, which is, I think, is the whole point of the conceit, is I'd go to the store, I'd get, I remember getting Justice League of America number 240, and, there was a return of a character that they had fought before, and there was all sorts of stuff like this, and I didn't know what any of it was, but I loved that. I loved the idea of this whole history that I didn't know about, and now would get to know about it. And so there's 6 issues of Sentinels out. It's a mix of Golden Age, public domain characters, and new characters that Roy has created. There's a few different artists that work on it. But it's a fun series if you like Bronze Age superhero books, particularly Justice League of America. This feels much more like Justice League than Avengers to me personally. Here's 270. Here's 271 and 272. And so for me, it's a really fun, just a really fun series. That again, if you're into that style, and I know that's the sort of thing a lot of you really dig, you want to check these out. Roy's running these Kickstarters all the time. There's 6 issues out right now as I'm recording this. By the time you see it, unfortunately, it'll be over. But he's running right now a Kickstarter for the first trade, which collects all 6 of these issues. But I'm sure when he has issue 7, has Kickstarters running all the time. When issue 7 comes out, I know you'll be able to get that trade as one of the rewards as well, so you can immediately catch up on the whole story. So that's really cool. But he's not the only one doing this. There's another great publisher called Atomic Pulp that I want to show you here. And I really, really enjoy the Atomic Pulp. This is a writer by the name of Christopher Mills. And you can see right away that he has these 70s DC style graphic design. So here's another one. It's got the bar across the top with a circle in the middle. This is the giant. And he does anthology series. So basically, instead of Detective Comics, this is Sleuth Comics #1. And it's starring the Black Owl, who is a Golden Age character. But it's done very much like Batman, and this reads very much like a really good issue of detective from the late 70s, like an Englehart era, like detective. I really liked this one a lot. I thought it was excellent. It really felt like that. The art's excellent in all of these, and he's got a whole line of titles. So with Roy and Standard, he also has a Standard encyclopedia that he puts out that's kind of like a who's who. It has a bunch of characters. With Atomic Pulp, he's doing a bunch of different series with different characters. So here's another one. This is Space Crusaders #1, starring Rex Dexter of Mars. And then there's a second issue of this one that's also out. And issue 2 of Space Crusaders features Space Hawk. Again, all Golden Age public domain characters that are being revived with this Bronze Age mentality. The storytelling is pure Bronze Age, the way it's written, the way it's drawn, the whole design. Savage Sagas #1 features the mighty Crom. Now, of course, people that read Conan, Crom is the name of one of the gods in Conan, but there was actually a blonde barbarian character in the Golden Age named Crom. Don't know whether that was stolen from the Conan stories, which were out in pulps at the same time as these comics. But this is, a rip-roaring, Conan-esque fantasy yarn. So he's got a bunch more in the works. These are the 4 issues that are out so far. There's also backup stories. The backup story here is Mike Lancer, Private Eye. And then in the pages of Space Crusaders, there's actually an ongoing backup story, and it's I think is it Detective Lance Lewis? Yes, it's Lance Lewis, Space Detective. And so the backup story runs through both issues and into issue 3, which isn't out yet. So even though the main feature in these is different, and then the back cover teases a bunch of the characters from other titles that have not yet come out but are going to be coming out. You can see the Black Terror here in the middle. Has a very different, like a very 70s style costume. And so they have these Bronze Age restylings. So really fun. These are not coming out as fast as the issues from Standard, but they're really good. And he's got a bunch more in the works with different artists. So it's really excellent. And I love that series as well. Again, I really wanted to share these, and I've been waiting until I got this last one I'm about to show you, like a whole broad array of these, because I really think a lot of you are going to dig this sort of thing. The last one is from Gallant Comics. Now, Gallant Comics is interesting. Here is the series that I have. It's Biff Stone Monster Hunter for hire. And so you can see the Bronze Age elements that have been updated a little bit. This takes place in the modern age. This one in particular has a very Bronze Age feel, but you can see the design elements. They've got like the Marvel Comics Group banner, but with more modern fonts. It's got the corner box picture like particularly like an early 70s Marvel. You know, there was that period where they had like the little circle up there and then they had the figure that was on top of it as opposed to being inside a box. And so these have this feel. No, Biff Stone Monster Hunter, again, it's another obscure Golden Age public domain character. And the premise of this series is that Biff Stone was this monster hunter in the 1970s, and that he got sucked into this alternate dimension in the late 70s and has been trapped there, but time flows differently. So he comes back, he's rescued and brought back out of the portal into the present day. So he's a man out of time, kind of like Captain America, except the character is much more of like a Burt Reynolds sort of. The writer describes him as like a Matt Houston type. So he's got this sort of 70s swashbuckling sort of thing. And these are by Barry Gregory. The other thing that's really interesting about Gallant Comics is that the guy who writes them and publishes them is also the owner of Kablam. Now, Kablam is the printer who does the printing for a lot of these comics. So, for instance, the standard comics, the Sentinels, is printed by Kablam. So they have the Kablam ad on the back cover of all of these. And that's a great advantage for Barry. I really kind of want to talk to him at some point about it, because how great would it be as a self-publishing, indie comic creator to actually own your own printing company, so he can just print the stuff up at I'm sure he can print them at cost. So that's a great advantage for him. He has a whole line of these. First of all, I really enjoyed this series. The only thing I would say is that I have the first 3 issues. Let me show you all 3 of them here. Issue 2, issue 3. These are what they call the artist's covers. They have a bunch of different variant covers you can pick from. I wanted to go with the artist covers. I like the images, but also by artist covers, they mean that the artist who did the interior also did these covers. It's a guy by the name of Del Barris. And I'm always a big fan of that. In my series, The Crime Busters, since I'm doing the interior art, the main cover of the series is always done by me, and then I might get other people to do the variant covers. And then with Cthulhu vs. Uncle Sam, I had hired Jay Piscopo to do the interior art, and so I wanted him to do the regular cover as well. It's very important to me personally that the main cover reflect the interior art, so you know what you're getting. Obviously, that's a really old school idea, and I'm not sure it was ever really embraced by publishing companies, or else we wouldn't have people like Gil Kane who specialize in doing covers for other titles. But there's nothing more disappointing as a reader than when you pick up a comic and there's great cover art and then you open it up and the interior stinks. Now, the interior art is cool on all of these, but that's one of the reasons I wanted these. But they do have some really cool variant covers. For instance, this is the issue 3 that I got, which is a cool cover by the artist, the interior artist Del Barris. But the back covers on these, they are teasing the next issues, and they actually show some of the variant covers. And here's a cool one here for the variant cover for issue 3. And this is clearly an homage to a Kirby cover for Avengers. I want to say it's 152, with the return of Wonder Man. And on that cover is a black Talon that's resurrecting him from the dead. So that sort of thing I think is really cool. Even if you didn't know that issue, I think you could tell that it's a Kirby-esque, but just look at the way that skull's drawn. So there's a lot of cool stuff like that, nods to specific 70s things. I started to say, the only thing I would say in slight negative about these is that there's only 13 pages of story in each issue. Although this last issue looks like it might have had 15 pages. But regardless, it's a really fun story, and there's a whole line of them. So he's doing a whole bunch of different books that are all set in the same universe. I'll show you. He has because he has plenty of space in the back for house ads. There's Amazing Man from this John A. Mann, Amazing Man from the Golden Age series, Amazing Man. Miniature Man. There's Funny Man. So if you're familiar with Funny Man, he was a character that was done by Siegel and Schuster in the late 40s. Did not quite recapture the Superman magic. And then Jet Powers and the Chrononauts is not out yet, but the character looks to me like he's a cross between the Charlton's Captain Atom and Blue Beetle, perhaps. I'm not 100% sure. But also Firehair, who is a Fiction House character, and here you can see they've definitely added some steampunk elements. She's still in the Old West, but now she's got a robot arm and she's fighting werewolves. And then Cowboy Sahib, a name that I've heard, but I'm not familiar with at all. So those are some of the other titles from Gallant Comics. So there's a whole line. They're all done again in this retro Bronze Age sort of feel, and they're just really cool. I love this whole movement. If you go on Kickstarter, you're going to find more of these. Right now, unfortunately, by the time this is over, this Kickstarter will be long gone. By the time this video airs, I mean. Right now, there's a Kickstarter running for a series called The Masters. And it's the same sort of thing. It's a specifically Bronze Age book, but using Golden Age public domain characters. And what they've done with The Masters is the guys who's running it, whose name escapes me right now, has actually hired all of these Bronze Age classic artists from the Bronze and Silver Age, like dozens of them, people like Ramona Fraden and Mike Grell and all sorts of these great classic artists to do variant covers and pinups and artwork for it to really get that like authentic. Ron Friends is doing covers, and Alex Saviuk and a bunch of people are doing work on these covers so that it really feels like a Bronze Age series. I don't know if that's going to be funded again. When I'm recording this, they've got 2.5 days left, and they still are like $20,000 short of their goal. But I think they might have a chance at it, and I think that if they fail, they'll probably relaunch and be able to succeed maybe on the second launch. But again, that's another book. Since I started doing Crime Busters 3 years ago now, I've really been seeing more and more of these coming out, and it's great. I feel like there's something in the zeitgeist that I tapped into without knowing it, because I guess that's how the zeitgeist worked, where we all at the same time sort of had the same feel. Like modern comics aren't necessarily giving us what we love about the comics from when we were reading. My favorite era, even though I'm a Copper Age kid, I started reading in '84. My favorite era is the Bronze Age from the '70s. That's what I really get into. And so we all just started making our own comics that have that feel. And some of them have taken it much further than I have, again, in terms of the graphic design, the setting, and some very specific Bronze Age stuff. And I love it. It's all just so cool, and I thought you guys would like it too. So let me know what you think down below. I'm going to try to include, if I can, in the description links to where you can actually get these comics. Some of them I'm not actually sure, but I'll try and research that and get that set up. And check them out. Check them out. They're fun, and I think you'll like them. Some of them are fun. And then some of them are like really good and fun. For me, of all these, the issue of Black Owl I thought was probably the best of them. I really like the first issue of Biff Stone, even though it was only 13 pages. The setup for that series I liked quite a bit. So yeah, they're all cool. They're all cool. So yeah, thanks very much for watching. I hope you check these out, and I'll see you next time.